There were a number of quirky accessories released for the Nintendo Gamecube, such as a keyboard controller and the DK Bongo controller. It wasn't until recently, after playing some PS2 games with wheels, that I wondered if there was one for it as well. The PS2 has a much more extensive library of racing games than the Purple Cube, but it still has some great titles, and yes, Logitech did produce a wheel for it. I traded my Gamecube in many years ago, and I'll just have to test some games out, very illegally of course, using the Dolphin emulator with the Logitech G920 wheel. And if I found that using a controller was more suitable for a game, I'll use the Xbox Series X or PS5 controller. I was really surprised how well F-Zero X handled with the wheel, so I was expecting the same with GX, but it just didn't feel right as I couldn't quite get comfortable making the quick, sharp turns. I'll be going back to the controller to finish this game for the first time. Even though I loved F-Zero X back in when it released, I somehow completely missed this awesome game. Hopefully Nintendo makes a proper sequel for it someday. Mario Kart Double Dash is another great Nintendo racing game I've never played. I think I was into the Need for Speed Underground series at the time, and never gave Mario Kart a chance until the Wii released. To me, this handles much better than the 64 version, as I can control the drifts much easier. I wasn't even going to try Wave Race, but I thought someone out there would want to see if it's worth playing with the wheel, and it's definitely not, which is no surprise because the Nintendo 64 game didn't feel right either.
Past the yellow buoys on the left. Excellent. One lap down, you're in 4th place. Right on. You got it. Turbo's all yours.
At first glance, Racing Evolution looks like a sim to rival Gran Turismo. However, it is an ultra arcadey game with weird psych-out mechanics where you can put pressure on their AI opponents by staying close to their bumper, causing them to have a mental breakdown and running off track. Weird mechanic aside, this game feels amazing with the wheel. It handles nothing like Gran Turismo, but it's also not ultra oversteery like other arcade races. Need for Speed Most Wanted takes me back to a better time where the series was the king of races. I'm glad I've tried it today with the wheel, as it's a blast drifting, hitting the Nitro, and shifting gears with the G920. Street Racing Syndicate is a cheap knockoff of Need for Speed and the early Fast and the Furious movies. But that is definitely not a bad thing at all, as it was so much fun and it's probably the game that surprised me the most here. It works perfectly with the wheel, and I think it's the only game on the Gamecube where you can use the clutch. I'm not so sure if they could release this type of game these days.
George, I'm hungry!
Hang on, hang on.
If you've watched my other videos, you'll know I'm not a huge fan of rally games. But Rally Championship here, it does work really well with the wheel. The slides are easy to control, and if I ever crashed then it was completely my fault. I'll probably never play this game again, but I did appreciate the cockpit views from such an old game. I haven't spent a lot of time with Roadkill, but I learnt quickly that this type of game is only suited for the controller. The vehicle handling feels fine, but it's just too difficult using the wheel to line up your shots when attacking enemies.
And get Uncle Woody's attention? Hell, anybody's attention, that's the way to do it.
I'd only seen the cover of Smugglers Run in stores but never bothered to try it, and I was surprised to see it was published by Rockstar Games. Playing it now 20 years after its release, and it's aged pretty well, and the vehicles handle great for such an old game. I'll definitely spend more time with this one. As for Crash Nitro Kart, I'd never played it, but knowing it received mixed reviews back in the day made me less optimistic about it. Based on the few races I played with the wheel, I'm really pleased with how it handles. It suits it so well that I highly recommend taking it for a spin. The last game I tried was the original Burnout, which is definitely my least favourite game in the series. It felt bare bones back when I originally played it in 2003, and I never touched it again after I tried the sequels. But Burnout 2 and especially 3 are absolute whack when playing with a wheel, as they are way faster and more frenetic games than the original. Even though I can actually complete a full lap without smashing into every oncoming car in this game, I'd still stick with a controller. Thanks for watching me test out these games with the wheel. It was a lot of fun trying these games that I'd mostly never played before, as when I think back to the time I owned a Gamecube, I only had it for about 2 years. I've got a few options in mind for my next video in this series, where I'll test some more racing games with the G920. Let me know which system I should try next.